like to talk about very important areas as the population ages in the reduction of falling and also the protection of the hip. And then my colleague Ed Wilborn, who will follow on from this presentation, will discuss more about posture, alignment and spine-related challenges that are occurring as we get older and our musculoskeletal condition changes. So COPA Healthcare is a distribution company for the United States. We're working with technologies that are primarily aimed at population from like 50 to 100 years of age in the area of musculoskeletal health. So our ultimate objective is to help reduce the rate of compression fractures in the spine and then hip and associated fractures that are occurring because people fall over. So we want to help patients enjoy an active and satisfying daily life, and our sort of condition focus is things like sarcopenia, the falling itself, osteoporosis and underlying bone health, as well as helping to prevent fractures. So what I'll do today is introduce you to the Marodyne low intensity vibration device with particular emphasis on fall reduction and bone health. It's a broadly used device that can be utilized in children as young as 4 with bone suppressing conditions like cerebral palsy or things that the child is born with. And then also as they go through earlier life, onset of things like anorexia nervosa, maybe Crohn's disease and things like that that can have some impact on bone. So our area of interest today is going to be the sort of 60 to 100-year-old population. And then I'd also like to introduce you to a range of hip protection products from a company called DeLock, which is based in New Zealand. So why are things changing? The boomer population, of which I am one, is now one of the biggest ever groups of mankind to be going through the system. So in the US every day, 10,000 people become 65 years of age. And this is going to carry on until we get to a peak around 2034, so in about 10 years' time. And then we've got this steady aging population over the next few decades. So this is a really big issue because something like 71 million Americans over 50 have osteoporosis or low bone mass. So it's a condition we can't ignore. So when we look at health challenges in this 50 to 100-year population, at 50, you've got issues like cardiovascular disease, and that carries on obviously all the way through to the rest of life. But there's cancer and osteoporosis beginning to pose a problem. But falling isn't really an issue. It starts to change as we get to 65 and then becomes a real problem when we're around 75 and above, where you've got this tsunami of dementia and or Alzheimer's or neurocognitive decline, underlying bone loss, plus muscular change, which is increasing falling, balance-related problems. So this is a real challenge. And as we've just been saying, there are going to be a lot more people going into this category as we progress over the years to come. So Marodyne low-intensity vibration is one of the solutions that can be utilized, and we'll discuss this now as we go forward. So the Marodyne device, which is that big white one in the middle, that was designed around 2013. Now, predecessor devices were the Juvent dynamic motion therapy device that was designed about 20 years ago, and I've been involved in all of these since 1998. And then there was a Exogen research device that was used in clinical trials in the 1990s. So the use of low intensity vibration in human use is getting towards about 30 years of real experience, either in clinical trials or commercial availability. And commercial devices have been available for around 20 years, from when the Juvent came out and then in 2013 when the Marodyne emerged. So the indications for these types of device are balance, sarcopenia, rehabilitation, and that could be after hip fracture repair or other conditions, and underlying bone health. Most people that buy them are looking for solutions for bone health because there's a big push against bone medication generally, and solutions on the exercise side, which can be complemented by the Maridine, are highly regarded and of great interest to particularly women as they go through the sort of menopause and beyond. So a Maridine type device is used every day, ideally at 20 minutes of use, and that's broken into a couple of sessions of 10 minutes each. In this country, the device itself is a class 1 exercise device. That's the current sort of status that the FDA applies to it. Now, if you go to Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, other geographies, low intensity vibration devices, Juvent years ago, the Maridine in the recent years, are class 2 medical devices approved for the treatment of osteoporosis. So there's around about 30 years of scientific information in humans, which we'll be talking about in a bit more detail as we progress through this talk. And the Maridine device itself is manufactured in Germany. So just bear with me while I move to the next slide. So a Maridine device, you stand on it. It weighs, and they're designed for portability and ease of use. So in the home, they're an easy to move around device. They're about 14 by 18 inches in area, 3 inches high. They can be applied, they can be utilized in United States and other geographies with electrical supply from 100 to 240 volt. And basically what's happening is the person stands on it, and there's a microprocessor that's controlling the sound actuation, which is creating the motion, the upward motion of the plate. So if you sort of look to the picture on the left, the individual stands on the device using G force, which is acceleration against gravity of the whole body of the human. 0.4 G is being put into the feet. And that's constant because the device uses a closed loop feedback to maintain monitoring of the dynamic load on the plate. So the first thing it does is match the user who's on it. And then secondly, it matches the user's behavior as they're standing on the plate through a session of use. Because we're not concrete blocks, we are mass that can move. So the 0.4 G goes in, and then there are effects of attenuation as you go up the body. So through the legs, around 0.1 G is lost. So into the hips and the lower spine, 0.3 G is reaching that area, and then it further attenuates to 0.1 G getting into the head. So this is really important from a safety perspective, and we'll discuss that in a little bit more detail in a minute. So what does this do? Well, if you think about the bone marrow as the manufacturing site for bone building cells, osteoblasts in particular, then these small movements are stimulating increases in mesenchymal stem cells and biasing of those mesenchymal stem cell populations towards osteoblast genesis and away from adiposity. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on as we go through the talk. So what does it mean? Well, it means the Maridine, to some extent, is a surrogate for fast-firing muscle fiber because it's working around 30 cycles a second, which is similar to some of the firing and contraction rates of the faster-firing muscle fiber type 2A, type 2B categories. So I want to just touch on safety first. Vibration is a pathogen. So there are international standards for human exposure to whole body vibration, and the ISO 2631 sets certain limits for how much exposure you should have in a 24-hour period. So a whole body vibration plate, like a power plate, the exposure is sort of less than a minute in 24 hours based on the force magnitudes in acceleration. A low intensity vibration plate, like a Juvent or a Maridine, they're safe for 4 hours in a 24-hour period. And we're talking about utilization of those at around 20 minutes in that period. So it is, in the vast majority of the population, a very safe device. So this is actually shown quite well in this video. So if you look at the bowl on the left, that's a 30 hertz sine wave going through the water, which would be similar to what a low intensity vibration plate is putting out. This is what a power plate device is putting out at low setting, and this is what it's putting out at high setting. So you can see there is a significant difference in force magnitude from acceleration between low intensity and whole body vibration at higher magnitudes. And we treat higher magnitude acceleration as anything above 1 g-force. So these things can get up to about 15 g. For reference, acrobatics in a jet, you're pulling about 7 Gs when those guys are doing maneuvers. So some of the vibration plates can be doubling that acceleration. So this is like seriously intensive, and it poses risks. So that's the reason we're very focused on the low intensity category. So low and high intensity vibration plates, where do they fit in? If you're a child, under say 4 or 5, then these really have no role. But in kids who may have bone accrual challenges, low intensity vibration has been studied for the last 30 years. And also some of the higher intensity vibration devices like Galileos, for example, which can be controlled at different frequencies and magnitudes, have also been studied for conditions. And they're a very useful tool in children because they're not medication. Now, as we get into the adult population, then high intensity vibration is perfectly reasonable if someone's fit, active, strong, going about life in a normal way. As you get older, 60 to 100, then obviously they start to become more of a challenge as frailty and other challenges affect the human. So we're particularly interested in this category. Why? We want to stop you falling over. So if you look at a sort of leg format in a 25-year-old compared to a 63-year-old, you can see on the left, you've got a very vibrant musculature made up of type 2A, type 2B, and type 1 fibers, and not a lot of fat. When you get to the 63-year-old, there's an enormous increase in fat. And that's our challenge, because our body is increasingly getting fatty as we age. And also the fiber type percentages change. So the group under Lee looked at type 2B fiber content as a representation of age. And you can see there's a very, very steady decline as you get older in the type 2B fast-firing muscle fibers. So these are important, for maintenance of tissue integrity and also key things like balance. Now, when the low intensity vibration was being looked at initially, NASA were a funder of quite a lot of the research. So it was presumed to be quite a useful technology to consider for long-term space travel because of zero gravity and the effect that zero gravity has on both bone and also muscle condition, and the capability of the person as those tissues decline. So NASA ran a bed rest trial. And this was in adult volunteers, men and women. They laid in bed, 5 degree head down, for a 90-day period. Some of them were exposed to the low intensity vibration. We were calling it LMMS at those times, but it's the same as a LIV force. And there was a control group that didn't have the exposure to the LIV. And you can see from the benefit of the low level vibration that in all categories for strength in the legs and the back, they're significantly better. So what was happening was the baseline was being maintained pretty closely with the group getting the LMMS. However, the control group were declining. Now, if we think about mechanical force, bone and fat, Pagnotti and colleagues did a nice review paper in 2019 and looked at sedentary lifestyle versus exercise. And there are a number of things to think about as we look at the two circumstances. So if we're in an active, exercise-oriented lifestyle, we tend to have better bone and cartilage and muscle. Part of this is because we're creating more mesenchymal stem cells, and they're aligning with the osteoblastic pathway. The sedentary lifestyle is having an opposite effect. So adiposity is increasing, so the bone marrow is getting increasingly fat, and osteoclast resorption is increasing. So the bone that's there is being resorbed at a faster rate, and the muscle is also declining. So if we think about that musculature, if it's not the same as it was earlier on, it's having a different dialogue with the bone. So both the bone and the muscle are sort of systematically declining as we get older. So what can we do? The way to look at low intensity vibration is it is a type of exercise. So it's not a single magic bullet approach to musculoskeletal challenges. It's a sort of quite specific type of exercise. And the research, and I haven't put too much of it on here because there are stacks of papers that show low intensity vibration stimulates mesenchymal stem cell populations, proliferates those, and increases osteoblast output. It also contributes to stronger, better musculature, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So for frailer older people, it's a very safe exercise alternative if they can't do regular exercise for various reasons. It may also be a priming response to help other exercises have more effect. So it's definitely a technology that you have to look at and seriously consider if you're involved in care, management of the older population. So CDC in 2023 recommends low intensity vibration as a fall intervention for elderly adults. So that was published in the Study Compendium in that year. And I'll talk to you now about the clinical science behind that guidance, which was work done by the Chinese University of Hong Kong under Professor Kaz Leung and also latterly under Professor Louis Cheung. So the original study, and this was women 60 to 70 years using a vibration plate, and that was 20 minutes a day, 35 hertz, 0.3 G device versus just ordinary exercise. And we know the Asian population in that part of the world are probably more active than possibly people in the States. You know, there are various circumstances why, but people do a lot of regular exercise, and it's more normal with things like Tai Chi and Qigong and other things that people do. So the regular group were just doing what they usually do. It wasn't a systemized set exercise routine. But the LIV was 5 days, 20 minutes a day. So when they looked at the summary of the data at 18 months, they found the fall rate, and this is slightly obscured actually, so I apologize for that, but the fall rate in the vibration group was 46% less than in the control group. So you had something like 62 out of the 300 in the vibration group falling over one or more times versus over 90 in the control group. And also the fracture rate was less. So it wasn't correlated to hip fractures or anything. It was just fractures that had occurred in that group. And there were 50% less fractures in the vibration group. Now on bone health, using DEXA, the bone mineral density in the spine and the hip in the group with high compliance, so that's basically 80% of 100 minutes a week or more, they showed positive improvements in their BMD. And we've seen that in other studies. So definitely with low intensity vibration, if a person of say postmenopausal age group is using these around 20 minutes a day, every day of the year, then they're more likely to get positive BMD changes measured by DEXA in both the spine and the hip. But we're very, very interested in the falling and the muscle related benefits of this. So the balance was better. the postural stability was better, the quality of life scores were better in the vibration group compared to the control group. Now, Louis Chung in 2016 did a follow-up study of 50 or so of that group at 30 months, so 12 months after they'd stopped using the LIV. So what they found was in the group that had the LIV compared to the group that were just the control is the maintenance of leg strength and other control in the balancing and reaction times were better even at 30 months, 12 months after they had stopped using the LIV, compared to the control group. And these were significantly better than the baseline scores. So really, LMHF, which is the same as LIV, it's that type of low-level vibratory force, is a very good tool for balancing ability, muscle strength, and reducing fall rate. So this ought to be considered in every approach to the older population, particularly those living in sort of retirement communities and under sort of nursing home type environments. Now, there's some other stuff coming through on the muscle and rehabilitation side with LIV. Leung, around 14 years ago, reported on hip fracture rehabilitation using LIV plates. So again, 6 months, 5 days a week, 20 minutes a session, low intensity vibration used 5 days post-operative after patients with trochanteric fractures in their hip fixed with a plate and screw or a dynamic, like a gamma nail type implant. And they had better balance, muscle strength. There were some bone related benefits because in the animal studies that Rubin has done, bone integration around implants is extremely good with LIV. We don't claim anything to do with that in this country because it's a class 3 medical device indication for use. But there are very, very good musculoskeletal benefits using LIV post-op. The challenge in the US is everybody is dispersed and there are loads of different stakeholders that interact with the patient when they've had their surgery. So it's hard to deploy LIV consistently compared with what you can do in other geographies like Hong Kong, which is an integrated health system. But we shouldn't be ignorant to the fact that these devices are very useful for post-op rehab. And we're seeing now new data coming out in things like symptom relief in chemotherapy-induced neuropathy, muscular reconditioning and balance and gait for women that have had breast cancer surgery and had chemo as a result of that. So Kerry Winter's group in Oregon are doing work. They published a pilot study last year at ASBMR. They're doing a bigger study now as we go forward. So I think the use of LIV for patients that have had cancer to get bone recovery and musculoskeletal recovery is going to be an interesting area as we go forward. And then we've got, obviously, the data that shows it's useful for reducing falls. So I'd now like to just talk about DeLoc hip protection. So you can stop people falling over, but if they do fall over, you want to stop them breaking the hip. The challenge with hip protectors, as you know, is people don't want to wear them for various reasons. Indifference, the stigma, the fact they look like very broad-hipped individuals. But there is, clear evidence that shows if you wear the hip protector, you fall over, you do better than if you don't have the hip protector. So DeLoc have done quite a lot of work, which I want to show you, because they're an interesting company and they offer some options for the older active population. So I'm just going to show you a video of their product range.
Ian, does this supposed to have sounds or just video like without sounds? Because we don't hear any
Sound, it's
sound.
not coming through.
We don't have sounds on our end, but we just see the video.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't realize you weren't getting the sound on the video. Apologize for that.
It is really good. There's like wordings on the bottom. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. So DeLoc, which was formed around 2009, 2010, they looked at hip protectors on the market and they did a lot of biomechanical testing. So this was work that was also done in Cardiff through Keenan and Evans at the University of Cardiff and their biomechanical testing lab. And they created a sort of model to look at the force and the force attenuation through various hip protector pads. So and that was published, that their findings were published in 2019 in Osteoporosis International. And the DeLoc items had 5 of the top 8. So we're marketing now the Flexi, which is the blue pad. And we also have the Osteoactive pad, which is going to be evaluated this year. But, basically, there's a very solid foundation to the work that DeLoc have done on force management and force protection with their hip protectors. So if you look at their range, they have standard briefs in male and female, but you can change the inserts. So the blue pad would really be for an older, higher risk person, maybe in a residential community, who's fallen or falling. And these can be worn all day. They can also be worn in bed. So they can be removed. So they can have a number of pairs of briefs and one pad, just so it keeps it more pleasant for the individual. Now, for the active younger person who wants a good lifestyle but protection and doesn't want the sort of thickness of this pad, this is where the SAS pads come in. And these are motorcycle grade, as we've seen. They're thermoforming, so they mold to the body temperature. And these are extremely good. So that combination for somebody that's playing pickleball, walking, riding a bicycle, skiing, doing other activity, riding a horse or whatever, gives you peace of mind and some increased safety. So I think this is a really sort of useful approach to hip protection compared with classical approaches. And then for people that have got a sort of neurocognitive challenge, then there are closed pocket briefs. They have the white pads in them. So these are closed, stitched in, and you've got no worry about the person taking the pads out and maybe not putting them back in again. So this is good for sort of that memory care area where we need to consider people differently. So really, that's it. Our whole approach is aimed at keeping you tall, don't fall. And you can get further information from me at my email address in at copahealth.us or product information at maradine.us and copahealth.us websites. So thank you very much.
You are welcome. So guys, if you have any questions with Ian, definitely join us. There's a question portion there. So Ian, that's really nice innovations and technology, especially that's very simple for the fall preventions for the hip protectors. And that's really good for we have lots of assisted living facility here, modern maturity aging, and definitely we can share this, that it is available. and very portable, discreet, as you've said. I have a question. There's like the soft one, the blue Deloc, and there is like the osteo something with a different
Active. Yeah.
texture. And what's the benefits of that one? What's the difference of that one?
Well, the
Maybe I.
black one is motorcycle grade. So it's used
Ah,
and it's tested to the European standard for motorcycle grade protection. So this is what you would buy in, apparel, like trousers and jackets to protect your hips, knees, elbows, etc. if you're
okay.
on a motorcycle. So we've taken that pad and put it into hip protectors for people that are just normally ambulant, or
Mhm.
they may be riding a horse, bicycle, e-bikes. If you think about those, are very popular.
Yes.
They go quite quickly, so you protect your head with a helmet, but what are you doing with your hips? So that's really for the active person. The blue one would be better if you're in a place and you've got a full risk and you just need protection. But because it's removable pad, you can change the briefs. So somebody can have a number of pairs of briefs and so those can be laundered, and it keeps it cleaner and more pleasant, for the person, rather than the hip protectors that are all integrated.
Gotcha. So the briefs, they can buy the briefs alone, and then the pads is also separately.
Yeah, the pads will last forever pretty much. So
Yeah.
you're only going to need to replace briefs.
Yes, yes. Because that's a different kinds of briefs that there's an insert.
Yeah,
Those
so it's
looks
like a
like the
open
normal one.
pocket, we call it. And
Yeah,
there's
it
men
is.
and women's versions of those. And then we have the closed pocket in men and women where the pad is stitched in. So that's really for your sort of memory care market.
Regarding the LIV, can you tell me, can you share how much it costs? Because we have listeners that definitely, guys, this is really nice if you have an outpatient clinic that can you just give us a little bit of how can it benefits with the influx of patients, because that will be a good, like, difference and high ends that my clinic has the LIV. Now that we know the different innovations, evidence-based that is, so I have a clinic A in this city and I am the clinic B in the city, but I have the LIV. You can sell that, right? And especially that's another income for your clinic. But how much it costs and how can we build that with the Medicare things that we have?
Right. So the low intensity vibration plates, you could have one in your clinic. We have a stand that goes with that. So that's around $4,000 for those two items together. The Maradyne on its own is $3,200 list price. So going back to what you can use it for, there's a mix. So have one in the clinic so people can get to know it, can maybe spend some time on it, become knowledgeable of it. Then there are rental opportunities for people to have them for a period of time. So when I was talking about rehabilitation after, say, a total hip or a hip fracture procedure, then you only really need it for about 6 months. So you can rent one. Now,
Yeah.
the areas that we're seeing in things like chemotherapy-induced neuropathic symptom management and muscle recovery in the women after breast cancer and chemo, they're only being used for 90 days. So having access to the low-level vibration plate for various time periods is something that needs to be done when the person's in their own home, right? So you'd have one in the clinic, and then there is a opportunity to get them for rental, or they can buy their own one.
Mm-hmm.
And if they buy their own one, then we give you like a referral fee, and we also discount the price to the purchaser if they've been referred by you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
because we can use it personally for us. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
well, really for long-term use, if you think about it, for full reduction, you want to use it forever. You need to have it either in a facility where somebody can go and get access to it and use it each day with other people using the same device because it matches to individuals, or they have it in their own home or their own apartment because you want them to use it twice a day,
Mm-hmm.
but every
Yeah.
day of the week.
Thank you. And we are global, Ian. So we have lots of course, US based here as well. But I see that I have my doctor in Azerbaijan, and we have from I forgot where is she, but where is it available? And if ever they're interested, is it available outside internationally?
Yeah, well, the easiest thing would be for people to drop me an email. I can then put them in contact. If they're outside the United States, I know a
Yeah.
lot of distributors that are working with it in Australia, New Zealand, in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
because we worked together for many years. But also, we can refer people through the manufacturer who are
Okay.
BTT Health GmbH, and they're based in Germany. So the easiest way, Jenny, would be somebody just drop me an email and I'll be happy
Mhm.
to send that on either to the distributor I know in the country, or I'll send it to the manufacturer for them to pick it up and take
Thank
care of it.
you. Yes, yes, definitely. I know you showed already your information on the last slide. Just kindly put Ian on the chat, your email, and I'm sure they are very interested to learn more. In the Geriatric Rehab Summit, we have so many questions about that too, and we have a nice presentation as well with Doctor. All right, thank you. All
Thank
right.
you.
You are welcome. Good job, guys. So we are now done with Ian, and definitely we will be now on